This is Rich Nelson with Allendale. We have a special update regarding the 27th Annual Allendale Incorporated Nationwide Producer Yield Survey. This one is actually very interesting and very interesting points here regarding the actual numbers involved. Now, before we get into the numbers themselves, let's discuss some basics regarding this 2016 survey. This one did have record participation here. Last year was the fourth highest of all time. This one actually blew the doors off of the previous record, so very good, strong numbers as far as the participation rate. Also, the states represented, a total of 31 on this year's list, only 28 last year, so that's very exciting to see a few new states added on. In addition, we had valid surveys for the top 12 states. So, of course, we don't have enough quantity for all the minor states, the outliers, but certainly for the main, in this case, top 12 states, we had good enough numbers to have some very valid yield numbers for all these main groups. And of course, this does cover about 86% of all corn production throughout the nation and about 83% of soybean production. Now, as far as the yield survey, USDA does their own special two-part surveys, which last night's discussion with Lance Honig of the USDA NASS mentioned here. There, of course, is the farmer survey, and then separately there is the objective in-field yield survey, which, depending on maturity here, can have an influence on the final numbers. Now, as far as the yield survey, we favor a yield survey from farmers because not only does it model USDA's first approach, the first basic part of their actual yield determination, but because it has some underlying strengths. And one of those is actually a wide geography here as far as the actual results. Within the state of Iowa, for instance, we had 75 separate counties where we're able to have enough surveys to make valid measurements from. And that's 75, I believe it's actually 76% of total production in the state of Iowa by itself. So we like the idea of a wide geographic coverage. We certainly feel this gives us a very strong representation of not just yields within a certain portion of a state, but the entire state as a whole. Now, as far as the corn numbers, keep in mind for the month of July, we had some rainfall running about 2 to 2.1 inches over normal, and it was the saving grace of this year's crop. As far as temperatures, they did run slightly ahead of normal, in fact, less than a degree higher than normal, but this year's record yields will be coming from the rainfall numbers, as you see by this chart. Now, as far as the survey itself for corn, our numbers suggested 172.6 bushels an acre as far as nationwide corn. And this will certainly give the trade a little bit of discussion point here. That's down from USDA's 175.1, their approach on August 12th. And as far as these corn numbers, as far as the recent history, still very strong. In 3 of the past 5 years, we've run 0.4 bushels or under, compared with USDA's September yield attempt. So again, for the past 5 years, in 3 of those, we've been 0.4 bushels or less with USDA's September yield number. So very strong results there. Of course, 2012 will certainly be a very challenge for anybody involved in yield determination here. But as a whole, we feel that during average or strong yield years, that this survey is a good representation of what's out there. Now, as far as the nationwide corn yield of 172.6, this does give us a nationwide production of 14.942 billion bushels. And that'd be a little bit under USDA's 15.153. And no matter how you stack it, a 14.9 crop, still very, very good. And of course, a record there as well. And going down through the Allendale balance sheet, we still suggest this will be good for a number anywhere from 2.1 to 2.4 billion bushels, depending on what you use as far as actual demand. Allendale's approach, because we have a little bit lower demand than what USDA is using right now, we have 2.362 billion bushel new crop ending stock number. And that actually gives us a current price projection on December corn down to about 308. Now, as far as soybeans, the numbers there, just like corn, let's point out the rainfall issue here first. Rainfall we mentioned in July was about 2 to 2.1 inches over normal. In the month of August, they ran 2.3 inches over normal, and certainly that's a very big deal when it comes to soybeans. And as you can see by this slide here, the top states all got some very, very good rainfall. and that was the main driver of this year's yield determination. As far as the numbers on soybeans, if you're talking yield, well, you're looking at 48.5 bushels an acre is what our estimate is for this year's current crop right now. And as far as soybeans go, no matter what you're looking at, whether it's a farmer survey in this case or an in-field crop tour, the soybean numbers will be a little bit weaker compared with the corn. Simply the fact is we're still a bit more yield still out there. Yield determination is still being made right now. Therefore, it's certainly a little harder to do numbers as far as soybeans go. As far as the soybeans by themselves, in general, if we have a good year, there's no doubt that in most cases the survey will capture that. The only question is the exact severity of these actual numbers. And as far as the soybeans overall, well, you're looking at a 48.5 bushel per acre yield. That's under USDA's 48.9. And this returns a crop size of 4.026 billion bushels. That's just a little bit under USDA's August 12th attempt of 4.060. So still a record number as far as the production goes. The only question is about the size of this record. And like we mentioned with corn, depending on what you use as far as the demand numbers, we look down to the ending stocks here of 327 million bushels. This certainly will get the trade's attention, especially when you're talking of some of the export numbers people are throwing out there. Perhaps we'll see that number actually decline down to 300 or sub 300, possibly in the coming months. But overall, this crop certainly a very big one. And in terms of the trade's focus, well, you're looking at some interesting state-by-state discussion points regarding the state of Iowa, the top state as a whole. We do look for this to represent a record yield, surpassing the previous year's 192 on corn. As far as soybeans, we do look for this one to tie the previous record. As far as the number 2 state of Illinois, on this one you're looking at numbers just under record regarding the corn. As far as soybeans, we do suggest this will be a record yield as far as this one goes. And when you're looking at the 3rd state here, Nebraska, in this case, in both cases will be under the previous records for corn and soybeans. But as a whole, it looks like very strong yield numbers here from all areas. We, of course, did have all these discussion points regarding the variance in yields within each state. Discussions, of course, the normal crop problems along with that here. But as a whole, it looks like a very, very strong crop. If you have any questions about these numbers, in this case, a corn 172.6 or a soybeans 48.5, feel free to give us a call here to Allendale 1-800-262-7538.